Okay, so here we
Yeah.
are.
Yay!
Here
Finally.
I am with Eric Ness, face to face.
Yes, this is awesome. I'm excited.
This is cool. Just a little background on Eric and me. We met each other through the phone or maybe through email a good 20-something years ago
Yeah.
through a mutual friend, and have maintained on and off again contact online since then. But I don't think we ever hung out. I don't think we've
No.
ever really chatted face to face.
No.
So we only kind of don't really know each other too well either. So
Exactly.
we figured, like, why the heck not? Let's just
Yeah.
do this and see what happens.
Absolutely.
So
No, that's awesome.
So if it's okay with you, I'm going to start with 2 questions from my daughters,
Oh, excellent.
and
Perfect.
we'll start like kind of interview style, and then it will probably devolve,
Yeah.
not evolve, but devolve into something else.
Yeah. No.
So,
Exactly.
so question number 1, I'm gonna toss you an easy one.
Yeah.
This is from Vivienne. She's 6 years old,
That's awesome.
and she said, "What's 1 plus 1?"
2.
Are you sure?
Relatively. Although there are, what is it? I've seen a proof for 0 plus 2 equals 1.
Okay.
So, like, I mean, I'm aware that there's probably one out there that
Okay.
says something to the contrary.
Okay. And then this is her line. No, I'm just kidding. This is not her line. She said, like, when synergy is created, like,
Yeah.
Covey style, 1 plus 1 can be more than 2.
Oh, exactly.
So, yeah. So that's
I like
like a redefinition.
Yeah.
And then her next question was, where do you live?
So right now I live in the United Kingdom in England. I live in Cambridge, and I've been here for 2.5 years.
Okay.
It's been a lot of fun.
Why is that?
So my wife works for the U.S. government. She's kind of a intelligence agent, like an agency here in the UK, and like she studies Turkey. And so that's how we got here.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah,
exciting time to be studying Turkey, I think, and an exciting time to be in the U.S. Intel.
Yeah,
for sure.
no, exactly. Yeah, no. So it's a lot of fun, and I'm a programmer, and I am very I can do my work from anywhere. So
okay, cool.
So
and forgive the basic question, but what does a programmer mean?
That's a good question.
What might you be programming, for instance?
Yeah. No. So I mean, my kind of 9 to 5 job is I write tools that do help scientists do environmental monitoring and kind of rating, like it's environmental analysis. So the majority of what I do is taking lots of data from mining companies, and I make sure that they're.
Did you say mining?
Yeah, mining companies.
Oh, okay, got
it. And then what I do is I make sure that they're in compliance with all environmental rules and regulations.
Oh, okay, I see.
But I've also done it from like the perspective of the government, for instance, right now we're doing my business partner and I are doing a little bit of work in Saudi Arabia. We used to run the entire environmental program for the government of Ghana. Okay. And so we would do all the mines, all the manufacturing, we do all the ratings, and like every year there'd be like a public disclosure saying like, here are all the problems, these companies had problems, these ones did well, stuff like that.
And do most company or company heads like working with you?
Yeah, no, I think it's
like you're kind of a good guy, the nice guy, the bad guy, something else?
It depends on like if we're like, so the way it kind of worked or the way it kind of rolled out was my business partner used to work for the World Bank, and he and the one of the former ministers of environment in Indonesia came up with a methodology that would take environmental data from manufacturers and mining companies and hotels and whatever else. It would crunch it against all the rules and regulations, international standards or whatever, or even like local permits, and it would do a kind of a generic public rating for it. That methodology has since been adopted and is kind of rule of law in Indonesia, the Philippines, parts of India, Ghana, Saudi Arabia is kind of adopting it. And so what we do is like sometimes we work for the government and we help them. And so in that sense, we would be maybe more from the perspective of a regulator.
Okay.
And then other times, and if there's no kind of conflict of interest, then we would work for the actual company. And so like a company, individual companies. And whether the perspective is generally, so it's all automated and it's all very kind of clear cut of like whether you're in compliance or not.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
So like we're not really ever a bad guy, I guess. Like I don't know. Like we're not like, and normally like the companies that we work with are companies that in general like really care about the environment and or like see like a really strong relationship between that and let's say their stock price. If you wanted to be like, if one was kind of a little bit more kind of shallow, if you want to, kind of a shallow way to look at it is like, it's like if you're messing up the environment, it's going to affect our stock price.
Yeah, well, they're not unrelated. Yeah,
they're not unrelated.
Yeah, that's not shallow at all. Okay.
Yeah. So like,
interesting.
Yeah, no. So that's kind of that's my 9 to 5 gig. But then I have other hobbies that are just as important to me. I think at one point you saw like some of my news analysis stuff that I was doing.
Oh yes, yeah, but I didn't get a chance to get deep into that.
Yeah. No,
and
so
I'm not sure I quite understood it, but I'm interested for sure.
Oh, so
we're still talking in the realm of programming, right?
Programming, yeah.
So what exactly is programming? Is it just like creating operations that could like automate things, or?
Well, I think on a very basic level, it's just writing software to do a specific task. It's probably the simplest bare bones kind of definition of it.
Okay, and is this a synonym for coding? Coding is a very hot term, a very popular term now.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's synonymous?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I for me they are. Like I'm sure there's always that one guy in the back of the
Yes.
He's like, no, they're totally different, man. I was like, okay.
Cool.
Yeah, exactly.
I definitely want to get back into this topic, but I promised Madeleine, my other daughter, that she would get the next question.
Oh yeah, no, please.
And I told her you lived in another country, and she said, "What's your favorite restaurant, and what kind of food do they have over there?"
Oh, you know what's really funny is that so in England, is that kind of Oh, so I don't want to. So one, I have 2 kids as well, so like I don't get to go to restaurants very often.
Yeah.
And so far, my experience has been at least in kind of the really close vicinity, like Cambridge. It's like it's lived up to the kind of like the horrible stereotype of like England doesn't have any good food or restaurants. That's not entirely true. It's not. Cambridge is like a university town. It's a college town, and like all the food is kind of subpar. And like in London, it's much better.
Okay, I'm going to modify her question. Since I know you've lived in various parts of the world, including Minnesota, I think.
Yeah.
Do you have 1 or 2 favorite restaurants that you've from your lifetime?
Yeah, so I like so I lived in DC for 18-19 years.
Okay.
And there's a like a seafood restaurant that I like Old Ebbets is kind of it's a pretty fancy, swanky DC type place, but they have.
What do you like about it?
I'm a big fan of oysters.
Okay, all right.
I like oysters.
Yeah, oysters are great.
Yeah, I like lobster. I like it when I can get it, So
okay, is there something about the atmosphere or the vibe that drew you to that place, or drew you back?
So one of the things there was that they have an obscene tower of seafood called the
Okay.
Orca Platter. And if you show up at like between like 3 and 5 on a weekday, it's half off.
Oh,
So
okay.
instead of
All right, cool.
so instead of like I think it was like 120 bucks like off like normally, which is like
Yeah.
obscene.
Yeah,
But it
yeah.
was like it's kind of an impressive tower of food. And so I had a friend that what was it? He would just go down and hang out and like catch up, and she liked oysters as well. And so
Yeah.
I would normally just like treat her as like, yeah, all right, because it's half off.
Yeah, cool.
Like, and so like that was kind of my one of my favorites. And so like my
Nice.
brother and all my brothers are like kind of really big into oysters as well. So like
Okay.
so
Yeah, we love oysters too. My wife orders them every
oh
chance
yeah
she gets. We don't go out too often though either. Similar situation, 2 kids.
yeah
But she's also a professional cook. So
oh
the food that she makes is typically like better than
yeah
we're gonna find
yeah.
when we go out.
No. Well,
So,
actually, yeah. I mean, along the same lines, I've been kind of forced to like. My wife doesn't really cook, Rachel, and so like I've been learning how to cook.
all right.
And I've been getting better. And I feel like I have like a handful of dishes that are better than the restaurants here. So
Okay. For
I feel.
instance.
Let's see. I do like I do a nice salmon. I do like a kind of a shrimp linguine.
Okay.
I do some good tacos.
All
Like
right.
that.
So you're
Yeah.
Mr. Seafood, yeah?
Yeah.
And where'd you grow up?
So I lived in Indonesia for 15 years. And so that's probably where I kind of really grew up. Like
Okay, so we just had an interruption, and it was hilarious. And
yeah.
I'm gonna totally change directions. Okay, I
Yeah,
don't even
please.
remember where we were.
Yeah, I think we were talking. Yeah,
I have a
cool.
question though. His
Yeah.
name is Theo, right?
Yes, sir.
Very cool. Where'd the name
Yeah.
come from? That's my buddy's name as well.
Oh, really? Oh, well,
Yeah.
you're gonna love. So I wanted to name him Alan
Okay.
after Alan Turing. I don't know if you
Yeah.
know.
Hmm.
And then my wife is like I guess culturally Jewish, and
Okay.
she was coming up with like a whole bunch of like old school biblical names, and I was like,
Yeah.
I can't do that. I can't do it. So we were kind of at just bumping heads against what to name them. So what I did is I built a computer program, and I went out and I got like a subscription to like a list of like it's kind of like the U.S. phone book.
All right.
And I took everybody with my last name and I scraped it and I put it into a database, and then I kind of marked it whether or not it was male or female.
Okay.
And then I printed it out and I gave it to my wife, and I was like, I don't know what his name is, but it's in this packet. Like, I mean, we just need to figure it out. And so we started circling ones that we were like all right with.
Yeah.
And then we kind of narrowed it down to about like 20.
Okay.
And then like same thing with Vera. We did literally like we chose the name about an hour before they kicked us out of the hospital.
Yeah, I don't think that's totally uncommon.
Yeah,
It happened
exactly.
with us as well. I still have a napkin. It's a Subway restaurant napkin from the first floor of the hospital.
That's awesome.
With like 10 names written on it.
Yeah.
And we were going back and forth for what the naming of the child is an interesting phenomenon.
Yeah. No, it totally is.
Because you kind of have, I don't know, maybe you have some sort of trajectory in mind when you pick a certain name or vibe or something, or
yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, I mean, yeah, because otherwise I wouldn't have chosen Alan.
Yeah,
right?
True.
Yeah.
Good point.
So I'm trying to remember.
Okay, cool.
The question for names, Theo.
Yeah, we were talking about names.
Yeah, no, but that's how I came up with ours. And like it sounds like you were kind of almost exactly in the same boat. Like
totally.
10. Yeah.
We had so many names, and we had Rocco Dimitri picked out for a boy, or Jack Elvis. Those were the two.
That's awesome.
It was probably best off that we had 2 girls.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
But does he? Vera is the other one, right? Or Vera?
Yeah, Vera.
Do they know?
Did they know what?
Like, does anybody know?
How they got their names?
No, 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 no. That's stuff about you.
Oh,
Let me see if
yeah,
I can get this to work. Hang on just one
yeah, yeah.
sec.
When Smurfs die, everybody's alright. They don't rot away, they don't go away. When Smurfs die, there's no smell. How can one tell if they're dead? They don't go away.
Like, does anybody know?
Oh yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. No, what
Right.
is it?
So you're out.
What's that? Oh yeah, 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 yeah. No, no, no. No, what is it? It's
Oops.
yeah, no, it's kind of hilarious. Like, there's a couple of songs that like my daughter likes, from like kind of a later band,
Okay.
and one of them is called like Lazy Gorilla,
All right.
and so and it's kind of funny because like they're kind of like that band and kind of the Moonglows, where like kind of everything's written on the spot.
Okay.
And,
All
and the
right.
same and the same thing kind of goes for like this other band where like all the songs were like written on the spot.
How how much do you mean that written on the spot? Do you mean that literally or?
Yeah, yeah. So like with the band after kind of like the Moonglows, like we had like three rules. One rule is that all songs had to be written on the spot. Like you couldn't,
Okay.
uh, with very few exceptions, like we just had like a book full of titles of songs that we thought would maybe be funny to write,
Okay.
and so like that was kind of like that was pre done, and very few piece like little bits would have been pre done, but like so everything was written on the spot. One of the things is that you could practice as much as you wanted, right? Like, and I'm talking like over like a 2 hour session. So
Okay.
like you put down the drums, then you kind of come back and you put on the guitar. But like, let's say you were practicing the guitar, you could practice it as much as you wanted, but once you hit record, you couldn't go back.
Okay.
And the same thing kind of goes for like the vocals.
So
Like,
so there was okay. So if you hit record, that was it. It was like a one take,
yeah, yeah,
and
everything's like kind of like one take, but you could
and there
practice
was
your
no
stuff.
like halfway through like this sucks. We're just gonna ditch it. It was just like if you hit record, you're committed.
Yeah, I mean, and we kind of held to that for like the most
Okay.
part, and then like the last one is that like you had to be inebriated essentially.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
like
Three rules.
yeah, yeah.
Three rules.
So it was, but it
Okay.
was, I mean, but like one of the nice things about it was that like so like the other thing that was kind of funny is that like I've always been into kind of recording engineering kind
Hmm.
of stuff, and the what was really interesting was the other two guys in the band were also recording engineers, and so we'd spend a lot of time kind of fixing it up and trying to work out and try to get it all like sounding nice and pretty. It was just a lot of fun, and
Yeah.
then like, and I think that's the thing. If you do it in the confines of like those types of rules, like you're
Yes.
almost guaranteed to have fun, and it kind of comes across like it's not like like you're
Now
there to
I
have it.
now
You're
okay. Now I could give you a different perspective.
sure,
It's really interesting to hear you say that. I could hear other people say you're almost guaranteed to have like a panic attack or like
sure,
a heart attack or massive
sure.
anxiety
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah. Well,
fear or shame or embarrassment or any number of other things.
sure.
So
Yeah.
what distinguishes your perspective, I guess?
So
Is
I
it just a
look.
natural personality thing or
There's probably like a little bit of that.
okay.
Like also the fact that I've played for a while,
Okay.
and but then I think, but also I also look at it as like none of these things are finished products. They're like it's almost like I'm not an artist, but it's just like a little sketches. Like
Okay.
I see like and like who cares? Like it's a sketch. And like I spent 2 hours on it. It's not going to be perfect.
Yeah,
And
okay.
it shouldn't be perfect. It would be
Sure.
weird if it was. And so I think a lot of it, like, just is your kind of where you are, like, mentally, and if you just kind of frame it as that, like, I mean, it's
Okay.
kind of a good. I think it's kind of a good way to get around anxiety, because, like, I mean,
Yeah. Okay. I'd love to hear more. And as a teacher as well, because
yeah,
you know, I often give advice that's very similar to what you just said.
right,
Be it producing some sort of analytical or essay type writing or something free and
sure,
creative. But you know, oftentimes people will just get stuck,
yeah,
writer's block, or you name it. So,
yeah,
is there any way you could sort of synthesize what you were just saying, or maybe take it in a different direction?
sure,
Some of what you were saying was, I think, sorry to cut you off, was
yeah,
you were kind of talking about the benefits of having certain constraints and
yeah,
treating things not too seriously as a sketch, not a finished product, and
yeah,
you're saying getting into something about anxiety, but if you don't mind.
yeah. So I mean, uh, one of the things. So I used to have like this kind of so one of the things that I think is kind of interesting about being like or creativity just in
Mm,
general is that uh, I think it ebbs and flows, right? Like I mean that's why people have writer's block.
yeah.
But like one of the things that I think is really interesting is that uh, it's also kind of like a skill that you can learn, and part of that is just to kind of put your toes in kind of in the shallow end of the water, right? Like and not really care,
Mm,
and part of it is getting into that headspace of like not caring. And I think um you know like when I think about like the most creative times in my life, it was in part just because I was producing stuff, and like most of it was kind of garbage,
mm,
but I liked it. It was kind of my garbage.
yeah.
And like, and like sometimes I would, let other people like look at it and like, and like I would find it amusing because I was just doing it to have fun. And normally the people I shared with, like also had that same sense of humor, and
Mm,
they kind of appreciated it for what it was. And, it certainly wasn't, great stuff, but like it was fun. I had a great time, but the thing that I noticed is that like the more I would do it, like the easier it would become. And so I think that's kind of like one of the items of being creative that kind of gets a little bit lost, is that like it's kind of a skill that you can learn, and part of it is just kind of getting out there and doing it.
okay.
I don't know if that's been your experience or anything like that, but like I mean, to me, that's always been like really.
Does this creativity carry over into your professional life at all in
I,
any ways? Like, is there any overlap between that piece of music that we just listened to
yeah, yeah. So
and what you're doing now?
it's actually kind of funny you mentioned that, because like to me they're I can almost feel like every once in a while you write a clever piece of code or you get something to
Mm,
work. It's 2 in the morning, and your wife is like, "Why aren't you coming to bed?" It's like, "I'm almost there. I got it. This will be done in like 30
okay.
minutes." And like, I mean, for me, I totally believe that it's like the same regions of the brain and the
Mm,
synapses firing that is like doing that, because like writing code is a very creative endeavor, I think, in and of itself. And like and I to me there's like a lot of similarities between writing code and
yeah, please go on, because I don't know much about it personally. I know a little bit about music, but not too much about writing code. And is writing code similar to writing music, or is it similar to any other creative type endeavors, or it's kind of its own thing?
I, for me it's been very very like similar in for me it's been very similar. I do know that there are people who write code who literally like and sometimes it's kind of frustrating because like they're really smart people,
Mm,
and like it's just like a 9 to 5, and all they care about is on the weekend they want to go hiking. Like
Okay.
something kind of like something wildly different, and like you can ask
Mm.
them like kind of really obscure uh, uh, questions, and they know the answer, and it's like something that like just comes really natural to them.
Yeah.
And it's like, but there's probably no, they just view it as a means to an end, if that makes any sense.
Mhm.
And whereas for me, it's uh, there's been times, or like especially in like in my hobbies, where it's like it's very much tied to being creative and thinking about things and going back at it, and just having an idea and then trying to go towards that idea, whether you reach it or not, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. So
So
you were saying you do some programming as a hobby, and I
yeah,
think you said some of it is helping people sort through forests of information and try to get towards
yeah,
some sort of clarity. Is that correct?
yeah. I mean, so like one of the big ones that I like to spend my time on is like news analysis,
Mm.
and reading large chunks of news, and like what I find interesting about it is that like there's like lots of information like stuck in news that is somewhat like, how do you get a program to read news and like extract stuff from it, like things that are meaningful. So
Yeah,
like
my students they had an invention contest in my class recently,
yeah,
and one group of students came up with it was a program called Sum Up,
yeah,
and they didn't have any of the details down, but basically it's for students who are overwhelmed with their research. Like the program would kind of comb through all your sources
yeah,
and synthesize it into something manageable.
yeah,
It would
yeah,
do all your research for you.
yeah, no, no, absolutely. I
They
mean,
didn't
so
win the contest because people thought they might have been cheating, but that was kind of a cool idea.
yeah, no, well,
But,
like so there is actually, there's been a lot of work on like essentially text summarization, right?
okay.
And there are algorithms to summarize text, and like and it's kind of fascinating. Like
Hmm.
one time as a joke, I put in the Franz Kafka's Metamorphosis, and I
Yeah.
narrowed it down to like 5 sentences, and it was kind of interesting to
Yeah, I
see how
bet.
it worked. And
Yeah.
like but like yeah, text summarization is kind of a huge chunk of it, right? So like
Okay.
instead of like reading instead of reading like 1,500 words, how do you get it down into, let's say, a paragraph?
Okay. Yeah.
And and there are libraries out there that do that, and that's one that I haven't kind of built from the ground up, but I do have like, I use a library to do my text summarization, because like
Okay.
sometimes
And
some
I'm sorry.
people,
What does library mean? I don't know.
oh so like imagine a black, the classic black box.
Hmm.
So you hand the box a whole bunch of text. So in this case, let's say Franz Kafka's Metamorphosis, right?
Okay.
And so I hand the text of Franz Kafka's Metamorphosis, and then it spits me back as many sentences as I want as a summary. So
Okay.
I
Oh, I
can
see.
have it. So instead of like, let's say
So you could do 75%. You could do 5%. You could,
yeah,
et
exactly.
cetera.
And it would like crunch it down into
Okay.
whatever you wanted.
All right. And you probably get some funny results.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's but you'd be surprised
It's
actually.
getting better. Yeah. Huh?
Yeah, you'd be surprised. I mean, and quite often, what is it? It's yeah, no, it's like between the title and like, I mean, especially for news, right? Like
Mm.
between the title and, let's say, one or two paragraphs, like you walk away with whatever's in the story.
Okay. Okay. Can you
So
walk away with any of the nuance, or have you heard of the term Russell conjugation? That's what it's
uh,
called.
so conjugation, I'm no, I haven't heard of that. Like probably
There's
means
another
something
term
different.
for it, but I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah,
And essentially, it's how it's often in headlines,
yeah.
and how one word could have different connotations, or
Oh,
different words could have the same connotation,
sure,
and
sure.
it's pretty much it's like a form of infusing bias, either consciously or not.
Sure, sure, sure.
through diction, through word choice.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, uh, I'll come up with some examples later, but I was just curious if that.
That's
So
something.
anyway, can what you're doing pick up nuances like that, or is it rather literal? Can it pick up
So,
any connotation or anything?
so maybe another way to look at it would be something about like what does the system, like what the things that I'm interested or what I had the system do is extract like nouns. So like like people, places, things. So but it can distinguish between like, okay, this is a person, this is an organization or a place. Like one time I had it reading like articles on specific diseases, so like HIV and AIDS. And
Okay.
so it would pick out all these texts, and then I would grab all the locations that it would talk about, and then I would plot it on a map. So
Mhm.
you could actually see where the news was talking about,
Okay.
visually. The other one is that if you start extracting like people, and then especially like organizations, right? Then so like right now I have my system just reading like political news,
Hmm.
and like what is interesting is that like the relationship between individuals and organizations, and I have it like where um, it would show the like it's almost uh, like a mind map, if that's
Yeah.
so like all right, like if I have an individual that I'm looking at, what are like the top 20 other people or organizations that are always talked about when this person comes up, or if this organization is being talked about, who are the other major links in that. So it's really like link analysis, if that makes any
Okay.
sense.
Can you give me like some kind of concrete example?
Okay.
Anything maybe current political that might just help me understand what you're saying?
Okay, so like a really good one would be let's say the DNC or the RNC, right? Like
Mm.
for the DNC, like certain people are always going to come up. So like right now, it would probably be very heavy on like all the individual candidates that are still in the
Mhm.
race. Historically, it would have been like with I guess Obama. Uh, the same thing goes on the RNC side.
Mm.
Uh, or if you kind of go into what is really interesting is you start like picking up on individual people, and so like those individual people sometimes are mentioned in the same news items as like other organizations that you wouldn't necessarily pick up on. And that's kind of the fun part about it, is that like you kind of see relationships that you maybe weren't aware of and all of that. So yeah, that's kind of the interesting thing about like link analysis when it
Okay.
comes to individuals.
And we could distinguish this from like crazy conspiracy theory guy, especially how.
Well, so like I mean the main yeah, no, it's very much like a
Because
red string.
that's
Yeah,
a visual. You do.
yeah, it's a visual, right? Yeah, like well the difference is that like it's really just pulling from like news sources. So like anything like I would pull in all my news from Google News. So it'd be anything that would kind of come through their system. So it's everything from like the New York Times to Washington Post, Fox News, Chicago Tribune, down to like the Louisiana Picayune kind of thing.
Got it.
So like I mean, uh, it's not going to go through. Um, it would include some of the blogs, I guess, but like
What
not
I was going to
not
ask you is, it going to pick up like a Vox or a Breitbart or any of that kind of stuff?
it might pick up a Breitbart and a Vox and like Hot Air,
Hmm.
but like I think that's kind of like that's the outer boundary of it. But like
Okay.
um, you can actually you could like whitelist or blacklist certain organizations if it was starting
Okay.
picking up. But
What is your personal interest in this? I mean, or
oh,
is it just like one thing led to another? You're
no,
pursuing
no,
you're
no.
pursuing your hobbies, and here you are, or
No, actually, I have a kind of a really interesting. Uh, uh, I got into it from a very unusual kind of scenario. My dad used to work for a mine in Indonesia,
Okay.
and he was at the time. What happened was is that there was an NGO that essentially kind of went in and was trying to. My dad used to work for an American gold company in Indonesia.
Okay.
And what happened was is that there was NGO that kind of, in my opinion, kind of like manipulated some like local villagers, and they it was during kind of an election year in Indonesia, and they were saying that the U.S. company was polluting this bay, and what was and as a result, like the New York Times picked up on it. It was front page. My dad and 5 other people were arrested. My dad didn't really spend any amount of time in prison, but some of the 5 other people actually spent quite a bit of time in prison next to like the Bali bomber and all kinds of crazy stuff.
Okay.
And as a result, what was really interesting was I started a website for my dad, trying to keep track of all this stuff. And
were you local, or were you local to him at the time, or were you?
No, but I'd lived in Indonesia.
Yeah. Okay.
Like
But you started it from, I guess,
I
from
started
DC.
DC. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I started kind of almost. Part of it was so like one of the things was, this is kind of how I got into doing environmental data as well.
Okay. All right.
And so like one of the things was is that the WHO went and analyzed the place. The Indonesian EPA essentially initially said like there was no pollution. The WHO cleared it. There's a huge mercury poisoning institution in Japan. They said there was nothing. The Australian EPA went out and like this like little plot of land was analyzed. It's probably the most analyzed piece of land ever. And like there was no pollution. But what happened was because like it got into the New York Times, this whole other narrative kind of snowballed. And so what I started doing was collecting all the lab reports and all the environmental data and all the other stuff, and I had it as a resource. And then I started kind of writing blogs on it, and like I would hand it out. I would like email it out to all the reporters in Indonesia, and like that's kind of how I got into it. And like it just kind of like really analyzing the media, and because like what is interesting is
with tremendous personal motivation. Yeah. So
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, my dad
as real as it gets.
Yeah, my dad was looking at years in prison.
Yeah.
I mean, he was actually so it was kind of a weird, stressful time for sure.
I mean, is this fake news before the term became popular, or would you label this something else? Was it irresponsible? What?
I would say it was
Naivety.
A combination. Like I don't exactly. I think it was
malevolence. Probably not, right?
I think that part of the problem is that there's this narrative out there, and it's bigger than just like the story, right? It's that like mines lead to pollution, right? And it's kind of a combination. I've seen enough environmental data from multiple mines to know that like that's a very fair claim.
Okay.
In a lot of ways, right? Like but the issue really boils down to is that like not all mines do it. Actually, a lot of mines care very deeply about it. I mean, it's kind of it's in a lot of ways it's a social contract between the ability to do business and your local community and the government and the the population at large.
Yeah, I mean, if you just think very simply about the incentives of the
Yeah.
various parties, it would make sense. Plus, these are people who they're doing their job out in nature, so by definition, they probably have some connection to it.
Yeah.
You know, that indoor people don't.
Yeah. No,
Plus,
exactly.
you're looking to create win-win scenarios whenever possible.
Yeah, and
That'll
then
keep you going.
yeah, and so like I mean, if you're talking about like I mean, was it how like fake news and stuff like that? I mean, I don't really look at it in terms of that. Like I really look at it as it's a very complex issue. You're fighting narratives that are ingrained. You're a lot of moving parts, and then a lot of like bad faith, you know, and like not wanting to correct the record or, you know, what's also kind of interesting is that like maybe 15 years ago, 18 years ago, I was actually a reporter, and I actually had my press credentials at like for the U.S. Capitol, the Department of Commerce, and a couple of other places. And like what was really interesting is that like I kind of know how the sausage is made.
Okay.
And part of it is that like I mean like I knew guys who had to churn out like 5-7 pieces a day. And so anything that you can like so there's not a lot of fact checking.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, that's crazy. I'm a decent writer, not the fastest writer, but it's nuts. Yeah.
Yeah, and so like I mean, so like and like you'd be amazed at like how few reporters there really are in the Capitol. You know, it's like it's not like there's like a lot of people there. And it's kind of a small group. They're very like
small group with a big voice. Yeah.
Yeah, and but also like I mean like what was really fun about my job at the time, like I was doing radio and I was doing agriculture, and so like what was really funny about it was like I would always throw a monkey wrench into like anybody's conversation at the time because this was like 2003. So kind of like the Iraq War was really big as a big topic at the time, and like well, what about this? What about that? And like I'm like, what about corn? You know. And,
okay. Yeah.
And so I was like,
you're that guy. Yeah.
I would derail everything, and like, but it was fun. I learned a lot, and so like I know how the sausage is made. I know that like that's why I was doing like the blogs, and so and that's why I was like, here are the reports. Like here's the evidence. These are report. This is the World Health Organization. This is X X X and X. Here's what's going on in the court case. Here's the summary. If you want more, here's a little bit more. And like and so I would only like feed it to reporters. I was only like I like a couple of other people, but like mainly I was just like trying to correct that narrative.
And just to clarify, the narrative you were concerned with at this point was the Indonesian narrative, pretty much, right? Because this was not really on the American radar, I imagine, right?
Well, it was the front page of the New York Times.
No, but after that, I mean,
even after that, it still made.
When you were contacting reporters with your research, were you contacting American reporters as well?
Some American reporters, yeah, and definitely like American outlets.
Okay.
But no, it was just interesting. Like Bloomberg would have been like an easy one. Like I mean, it may have been. I believe the lady was from Singapore, but like I mean, Bloomberg is definitely kind of an American outlet. So like a lot of stuff like that. So no, it was just interesting. It was
and before getting to the resolution of this particular complication, I'd like to hear your definition or maybe extended definition of the term narrative. But before you do, because that's a word that has so many different facets to it.
Sure.
But before you do, one way we might say it in a classroom like mine is narrative is any story that has a plot line that has there's like a little model. This is based on an Australian model. It has some orientation, which is basically who's who, where are they? Some complication, which is an unexpected problem for either the character or the reader. Some evaluation of the problem, which is trying to size the problem up accurately as possible.
Yeah.
Sometimes we think things aren't a problem, but they actually are, vice versa.
Right.
So there's orientation, complication, evaluation, and then there's response, which is,
Yeah.
of course, any number of responses, and then
Sure.
resolution, which is like, how does it turn out?
Yeah.
And then you can analyze, this response A versus response B,
Yeah.
and look at the outcome. And so that's kind of classic storytelling narrative
Sure.
structure.
Sure. Yeah.
But that's part of what you're talking about, but you're also talking about a different kind.
Yeah. No. I would like. I would almost. I would almost kind of put it in the ballpark of like stereotypes.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I would like, especially like the way I've used it, like in the last couple of minutes, and I would say like, there is like this stereotype of like the big bad evil corporation, doing something bad with impunity, and so of course the company is doing X, right? And sometimes that's true, sometimes it's not, and that's maybe more of that's how I've been using the term narrative.
Yeah, and of course that's another common usage.
Yeah.
But I was interested in hearing you define it because
Yeah.
I guess you were engaged in a little bit of narrative warfare of some sort.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
absolutely.
What do you think of that term, narrative warfare? Does that do anything for you?
Trauma? No, I'm kidding.
Was that? Yeah, I believe it. I do.
No. No, I like.
You certainly had purpose in your life during that.
Yeah. No, but I think it's also one of those things where like I generally believe people are decent human beings, and so like it wasn't necessarily that like you could sit down with any reporter and like generally speaking they were all awesome, but it's also like maybe to use like a common phrase, like the both sides of it, right? Why are you, if you're trying to balance out your article and like one side of the article is done in bad faith, why is that getting equal weight, right? And so and not that was the case all the time, because it certainly wasn't.
Yeah.
But there was like a little bit of that. There was a little bit of like not correcting the record, that like or very little enthusiasm to say, oh no, actually this was all wrong.
Yeah, it's like on Twitter. The original message gets 10,000 retweets, and the correction gets 400.
Yeah. And so it was
it's almost just the way it goes.
Yeah.
And which is an interesting incentive structure, short term at least.
Yeah.
To begin with, because the short term misrepresentation could get huge play.
Yeah.
Without terrible consequences.
Yeah.
I don't know. We're somewhat in a different.
Era. It's difficult. Like it's kind of interesting that like just thinking of like it's a very interesting time to be, like one of the interesting things is like there's just so much information, and it's hard to kind of figure out exactly what is good, what is real. Like, I mean, no, it's not even necessarily what is real, but it's like sometimes it's not like a black or white kind of issue. It's a shade of gray, and I think that's really kind of the hard part to kind of pick out, is like what exactly is going on.
Yeah, big time. And then, I think the old days. So President Trump, for instance, his tally of mistruths or lies or non-truths,
right,
it's probably up around 14,000 and climbing. I'm sure there's a ticker.
I think I think the Washington Post has one.
And then the follow-up question that I have been asked, and I've asked others, not a lot of satisfying answers, although I'm sure you can give one, is out of those 14,000+ lies,
right,
which ones hurt the most? And then, and we don't have to get into this topic, but a lot of people have a hard time answering that. Like, pick the one that did damage. And before you answer, here's the point I'm getting at. Like, let's say there's 10, boom, right off the top of everybody's head.
Yeah.
Okay, but we have like 15,000, so like that's like 99.9%.
Yeah.
What do we do with that?
Right.
You know, like, are they just? I don't know exactly what my point is.
Yeah. No, I mean, so I don't think it's easy to say, like, you can't pick your top 10, right? Like, it's kind of, I think it's a pointless exercise. It might be an exercise going in the wrong direction, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think what is maybe more interesting is that, like, you know, should they, like, an interesting question to me is like, should that be accepted, or like you could say like governments lie all the time, because like I think it's
now it's just kind of a little more out in the open.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so like there is like, you know, like I think what is interesting is maybe, at least to me, is like, I think what is maybe a little bit more interesting is like the you know, at a certain point, like when like there are events where like being a source of like, okay, yeah, like if one lies a lot, like then like when something important happens and like saying the truth becomes like paramount, it degrades,
like a potential big virus that's starting to spread.
Sure. No, I mean, that wasn't what I was thinking, but like,
no, I know. I'm just thinking, like, the credibility there is
kind of wiped out, and like, and I think as a strategy, like maybe a communication strategy, that's like kind of like, it's probably not a great long-term strategy. But yeah, no, I like, so yeah, to me, like, that's maybe a little bit more of an interesting question, I think.
Yeah. Those do seem to be two sides of the lying thing. Like, on one hand, some people have described it as, okay, untrue but directionally true, like, you know, like getting some facts wrong but still moving in the right direction.
Right.
Which somebody might call a productive lie or a persuasive lie.
Sure, yeah.
Which is, you know, like you get the details wrong, but you have everybody looking. Or you want people looking.
Sure, like, like housing is going to be like, March housing is going to be off the roof, right? Like,
hyperbole, you know, is one example of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which can be productive, but I don't know. I feel like societally we are maybe growing up through some growing pains, because this concept of black and white, true or not, it's kind of old-fashioned in a way, in some way. And I don't want to sound too subjective or moderny or anything. But when there's 14,000+ lies, literally, and people are having a hard time pointing out the ones that really did damage individually, not as a collection.
Right.
That says something. I don't know exactly what it says, but it's interesting.
Yeah. No, it's
like the old model doesn't really work maybe as much.
Sure. Well, like, I don't know. It's actually, it's a really interesting question. I mean, to me, I think it kind of comes down to personal preference, I think. You know what I mean?
Personal preference for,
like, I mean, it either bothers you. It either bothers you or it doesn't, right? And I think, at least culturally, right now in the States, it kind of is, like, he's my guy, I don't care, Like,
Mm.
yeah, like I know he does, but like whatever, which is incorrect to me, or
Yeah, there's some of that for sure.
like it's a little bit of tribalism, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, big
Yeah,
time. Yeah.
and like,
But that's a bit of a stereotype as well. But certainly, yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
out there. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But
And
like,
there is, and maybe it's legit.
yeah,
I'm interested in polarization and conversations, diverse conversations and
yeah,
whatnot. But maybe there's also an argument at times for digging in, team playing,
sure,
and truth be damned. And I don't like it. It's
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's not my preference at all. But
No, 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 no.
when depolarizing is such a conundrum as it seems to be these days,
Right.
maybe the team thing is actually that's the game. Maybe that's the wise game to play. I don't know.
I have no idea. But
It's
like,
not really my game, but
yeah, no, exactly. I mean, there's things, and that's kind of why it kind of boils down to personal preference, right? Like, I mean, it either bugs you or it doesn't, or it like, I'm not saying one is right versus the wrong, but like, in some ways, it seems a little bit like, so I had like this idea that what is it? Like take morality, right? Morality, things that are moral now are wildly different than what was like considered to be moral, let's say 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago.
right,
So it's kind of constantly changing, and it means different things at different times.
certainly.
And everybody has like their own moral kind of compass, and like mine is different from like the next person's, and uh, and what I and so like, and if you kind of go all the way with that kind of in an Alan Watts kind of scenario where like you just kind of take that argument as far as it goes, like it's like the moral relativism is you can it can leave you in a weird spot. And I used to kind of believe that, where like, oh yeah, like it doesn't really matter, it's just a belief system. It's just a point, just a kind of a point in time kind of thing where like, all right, this, but maybe what I'm getting at is that like, it's like there are truths, right? Like, I mean, like some things are actually better than other things, right? Like this, if everything's relative, right, that doesn't leave you with any concrete answers. And I don't believe that. I think there are like some things that are like just factually true. But some things are like statistically better. Some things are, where you could actually say like, this is actually better than this. And like,
Sure,
whether it's a policy or whatever. And that's kind of the danger about like relativism, I think, is that like it almost leaves you kind of in a like I don't care situation where like that's not a great place to be in, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and that's a trap that's easy to fall into when you are, say, a self-identified open-minded person.
Sure. Yeah.
That's one of the things that happens with quote unquote open-mindedness. Like the
Yeah.
classic, so open-minded your brains fell out.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly. Yeah. No, totally.
yeah, I've been there.
Yeah.
I probably will again at some point.
Absolutely.
But here's a question for you, and
Yeah.
looking at the clock too, but you just
Yeah.
let me know.
Yeah.
This is fun.
Yeah. No, I'm enjoying it.
Totally, if you look back through different eras and stages in history, the morality has changed. Yeah?
Right. Yeah.
But in terms of the morality topic, can we identify a principle that is still consistent? So even though the details change, is there a principle that's consistent?
Right.
I don't have an answer. I'm just curious what you think.
So yeah, no, I mean, what is it? I would maybe go along with like I would probably borrow heavily from, let's say, like a Christopher Hitchens, in that like kind of like probably a bad idea to kill somebody, kind of I mean, if you really break it down to it, anything that's kind of like loosely based on like the golden rule, like do unto others, is like is a good. I think that's been kind of consistent, you know, like kind of in the various shades that you can get in there. But
No, I think my question's a little bit different,
okay,
but I'm having a hard time thinking of how to say it. You know, everybody's got different norms. Every
right,
era has different norms, right?
sure.
Things they would accept. Um, I guess I don't know what I'm saying, but is there like sort of a go ahead. You look like you had something to say.
Well, no, what was it? Well, so it kind of like we're just talking about different eras. Like one of the
Yeah.
ones that kind of maybe it's like a little bit of a pet peeve, saying that like oh the kids today
Yeah.
they don't know how to do X, or like you know they're all snowflakes or whatever,
Sure.
right? Like then I think about like you know let's say like what you know like our parents would roughly be like you know the flower generation,
Mm.
right? Like and like oh the hippies they all like you know whatever like they don't know how to they don't know how to do X. Like it's always like whatever generation like the youngest generation is always like the worst generation.
Yeah. Well, there's a constant.
Yeah, no. And so like that, but I always think that that is like you know like I mean it's such in my mind it's such garbage that like it's always kind of funny, but that it kind of always is there, and it's always
Mm.
um, it's always lacking for me anyway.
Yeah. I think that is funny. Yeah. And you still seem to be pretty young at heart.
A little
So
bit,
and
totally.
I'm surrounded by the youth all the time. So
Yeah,
it's like
yeah,
yeah, it's hard for me to buy into the
yeah,
whole
yeah,
picking
yeah,
on the young thing.
yeah.
That said, I don't want to turn the microphone. I don't want to turn any cultural microphones over to the young or give personally. I don't want to give them the reins or anything. It seems to have been it seems to be a trend of
Oh,
late,
oh, okay, yeah, yeah. I know what
especially
you're getting. Yeah,
I think in the U.S. maybe, but maybe not just limited. But there seems to be a trend like give the youth the microphone and let them lead the way and I don't
well,
know.
I think
It's nice, but I don't know. It's a little overboard in my opinion. Am I making
sure.
any sense at all?
No, 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 absolutely. Yeah, I know exactly what you're getting at. And like in some ways, like I agree. The other end of it is that like what is it like as far as like speaking up and being heard, like sometimes I think kids get discounted, and I think they
Mm,
have kind of like a unique experience that like on certain topics
big
is
time.
more than valid.
Mm,
Um, uh, and sometimes they just kind of get shut down in part just due to age, right? Like, um,
yeah, and I think it's maybe worth overcorrecting for that. You know, like over
yeah, yeah,
encouraging them
sure,
as
sure.
a as a means of just balancing things out. I
But
don't know if
like,
I want to. I don't know if I want to hand the economic stuff over to them just yet.
sure, sure. Yeah, no, no. I mean, yeah, no. I mean, there's a lot. There's yeah, no. There's I totally get what you're saying. Yeah,
I have total different topic. I have this thing that I like to do with my students, and
yeah,
I call it forget what I call it. The view from an AI. So
okay,
either AI stands for artificial intelligence
sure.
or
Hmm.
alien intelligence, and so basically it's just taking the alien view of
Hmm.
things. So if we were studying a genre, for instance,
Yeah,
okay, one genre we studied is uh, uh, the presidential inaugural speeches
yep,
over the years,
yep,
and you try to strip everything you know and be an alien or be an artificial intelligence program
sure.
and ask and answer questions to understand how this thing that's called a genre goes and what it does.
Hmm.
And I guess my question for you is that something you could program? If not you, like basically a genre analysis tool that could analyze human genres, be they written, be they video, be they social, perhaps,
Yeah,
and and analyze the patterns in mass,
yeah.
use the tendencies, and sort of reproduce it
Sometimes,
at
yeah, actually,
will.
No, so like there's already stuff out there that
Hmm.
does that to a degree, and like and sometimes it's oddly good, if that
Mm.
makes any sense. What is really interesting is that uh, like a lot of it is done with using like there's a couple different methods. One uses what's called like hidden Markov models. So like one of the things is you get like a whole bunch of like a corpus of text. So like in this case, a specific genre. Let's take the text of all the State of the Unions, for instance.
Okay. Hmm.
We'll put them all in, and like what you will see is that certain words, certain phrases, definitely boil to the top.
Yes.
And so like and certain words are just gonna be there. They're almost like required to be in the State of the Union. And so like what is really interesting is that like you can like so here you have all this text, and within each individual word and or kind of groups of words, there are relationships to other words.
Mm.
And essentially all it is like it's in a lot of ways it's a statistical relationship.
Yeah.
So whenever I see this word, the next word has a certain probability of appearing,
Okay.
uh,
Okay.
roughly speaking, right?
Yes.
Um, and so like what happens is you can put all that in, it can analyze it, and then it can kind of you can actually have it spit out like a brand new one for like
Yeah.
2021. We can have it in the can today,
Yes.
and like
Yeah.
yeah, so there actually are programs that kind of do that and models that do that. Um, eh, it's still kind of in the infancy,
Okay. Hmm.
but like it's kind of fun to play with, and sometimes it's oddly good, and so
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it's hilarious. Yeah.
yeah, sometimes it's
And
hilarious. Yeah,
yeah, I have like 10 questions on the top of my tongue. One of them is not going to be a question, just a quick observation
yeah,
that your early music career of what I know of it
yeah,
um, is a certain version of what you just said. But we'll
right,
bookmark that, okay? Because
yeah,
no, because
yeah, yeah,
you were sort of a genre programmer as a
yeah,
musician.
yeah,
In
yeah,
other words, it's does that make any sense?
yeah, yeah. No,
Vaguely, you see
I
what
know
I'm getting
exactly.
at?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Okay. I mean, it's like insert genre here,
yeah,
mix
yeah,
it with two parts this and
yeah, yeah,
something else. And,
yeah, yeah. No,
yeah.
exactly.
So you're
Yeah,
kind of a replicator in some way
it
with a
totally.
twist.
I borrowed
Okay.
freely.
Yeah. Uh, how about art? How about just we'll keep it simple. Paintings is
Yeah,
uh, wouldn't it just make sense that automated paintings are going to be just way better than anything a human has ever done? And I mean even on the emotional resonance scale,
yeah. So
or maybe especially, which is just interesting.
so I'm kind of two minds of it.
Okay.
So so the news analysis stuff, right? It's
Hmm.
called natural language processing, which is
Hmm.
like
Okay.
which is a subgenre, like kind of a subversion of machine learning, which is a subversion of artificial intelligence.
Okay. Yeah. And when you look up neuro linguistic programming, you end up
Yeah,
getting to the
yeah,
natural language processing.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Two
And so
different
like,
things. Yeah.
and so like what? So on the one hand, I have like I'll always have in the back of my mind. I don't know if you are aware, like Google has this kind of machine learning, artificial intelligence that they taught to play the game Go.
Hmm.
And one of the things there is that they had it's kind of like the Deep Blue versus Kasparov, right?
Hmm.
This was like Google versus the gentleman who is like the number one. And apparently, one of the games, like the machine did like a really unusual
Yeah.
move, and it was just like so forward thinking,
Mm.
so like it was clearly like
Like in a different paradigm. Yeah.
yeah.
Like
And so there is some of that where I think like yeah no like that stuff is coming, but then there's another part of me that says yeah that's kind of it's kind of like a one off, like
okay.
it does do that, it can do that, but like like what the tools that we have right now are not the tools to really get to that point where it's like where it's like sublime, right? Like
Okay. Oh,
like
yeah, that's a good
like
word. Yeah.
yeah, like
Yeah.
the
That
tool,
word instant. That word just creeped me out when you said it. By the
yeah, yeah,
way.
yeah. No, exactly. Yeah, no. I mean, yeah, because like it, like once you get in there, like that's some
Yeah.
spooky
What is
level
this
stuff.
genre called? I see me right here on the screen and you right there, side by side. Is there a name for this genre?
I don't know.
Because this must be replicable at some point.
Yeah,
You know, like it's kind of becoming a thing, or it's been
yeah,
a thing, not becoming a thing.
right.
And it must be replicable because there's all sorts of uh, miniature recognizable moves that people within the genre make. Yeah, if
Yeah,
you're adept
exactly.
at it, or if you're
Yeah,
interrupting it in some way, or experimenting with it, that
no, totally.
this could be replicated, I'm sure.
I'm sure it could.
And it's not you that I'm looking at, right? It's this
Yeah,
thing
yeah.
on my computer monitor.
No, no, totally.
Are you really there?
Yeah, no.
I'm just kidding, but
No, no.
so, I'm sure some people could argue or say that this is a program too.
Yeah.
I'm not into that thing. That stuff weirds me out, like the simulation stuff.
Right. Well, like, yeah, what is it? Yeah, I'm not there yet on that one.
Yeah,
Like,
I can't get into that.
yeah, no, like, it's kind of like, I mean, I have like thoughts on like free will and stuff like that, and like, like it's kind of like,
Yeah, I can't get into that. I can't get into that topic. I'm sorry to cut you off, but
no, no,
I don't know if it's just defense mechanisms or whatnot. But
sure,
I don't
sure.
know.
No, like, no, but it's kind of in the same thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, there's some of those things like go pretty deep.
Yeah,
And,
it's crazy.
and I feel like it's always just kind of scratching the surface of it. That makes any sense.
Big time.
So
Did you enjoy this?
I did. How about you?
I did too. It was great because I didn't know at all where we were gonna head.
Yeah, no, this has been a
Not
lot
even
of
for a
fun.
moment.
Yeah.
But I have to pick my kids up soon.
Yeah, I was gonna say I gotta go.
Yeah,
'Cause,
yeah.
you got dude, I would totally like to do this again. At some
Yeah,
point.
cool.
Right on.
It's weird
Cool,
with
man.
the record button, but I don't know. Maybe that's one of the constraints that you talked about at the start. You know,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
you create these artificial constraints, and it shapes the types of things that could happen there.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
all right, cool. So
Right on.
we'll catch up.
All right, dude. Hey, it
Thanks
was
so
awesome.
much. Yeah,
All
that
right,
was really
thanks,
fun.
man.
Okay,
All right, dude.
bye bye.
I'll talk to you. See ya. Bye.